Hey everyone! Today we're talking about a group of people from a long time ago who gave the Romans a really hard time, the Cimbri. They were a group of people who lived a long time ago in a place we now call Denmark, in the area known as Jutland. No one is really sure who they were. Some people say they were Germanic, others think they were Celtic. Back then, the Romans didn't know a lot about the Germanic tribes, so they gave them names that sounded more familiar, like Celtic ones. The Cimbri also spent time around Celtic people, so they probably learned some of their language and customs too. Even the Roman writers couldn't agree. Some said the Cimbri were Germans, others said they were Celts, and some thought they were from old myths. So why did the Cimbri leave their home? Around 100 BCE, the sea began to rise and flood their land. This made it hard for them to farm and live, and people at that time believed things like this were signs from the gods. So the Cimbri and their neighbors, the Teutones, packed up and started looking for a new place to live. Some stories say they had 300,000 warriors, but that's probably an exaggeration. Historians think there were more like 150,000 people total, including families. Not all the Cimbri left. Some stayed behind. But the ones who did go started a long journey across Europe. They traveled along rivers like the Elbe and the Danube, going through the lands of other tribes. Sometimes they got into fights with local people and took what they needed. Other times they traded, made friends, and even formed alliances with new groups that joined them. In 113 BCE, they reached a place called Noricum, which is now part of Austria. Noricum traded with Rome. So when the Romans heard about the Cimbri, they got worried. They sent a commander named Papirius Carbo to handle it. The Cimbri didn't want trouble and agreed to leave. But Carbo tried to trick them by setting a trap. The Cimbri fought back and almost wiped out the Roman army. A sudden storm stopped the fight. Carbo was so embarrassed he poisoned himself. After that, the Cimbri and Teutones crossed the Alps into what is now Switzerland and met another tribe called the Tigurini. The three groups went into central Gaul, today's France, and started attacking towns. People ran to hide in cities with walls, but the Cimbri didn't know how to break in. Still, life inside the walls was hard, and many people got sick or starved. In 109 BCE, the tribes moved farther south into an area called Southern Gaul. Rome sent another army, led by Junius Silanus. The Cimbri asked for land, and said they would help Rome if they got it. Rome said no. Another fight happened, and again, the Romans lost. Even after that, the Cimbri didn't march straight into Italy. They went back north and spent a few more years raiding villages. The Tigurini split off and went along the Rhine River. In 107 BCE, they won another battle against the Romans near a place called Tolosa. Then, in 105 BCE, the Cimbri and Teutones came back to the border of Roman lands, ready for more battles. And in October 105 BCE, two big Roman armies waited near the town of Arausio. They were getting ready for the Cimbri and Teutones. A Roman leader named Marcus Aurelius Scaurus led a group ahead but was quickly defeated. He was captured and brought in chains to Boiarix, the Cimbri king. Even as a prisoner, Scaurus was brave. He told Boiarix to try invading Italy if he wanted to see real Roman power. Boiarix didn't like that and had him killed. The tribes kept moving down the Rhone River and soon found the main Roman forces. But the Roman commanders, Caepio and Maximus, didn't get along. Caepio thought he was better because of his rich family, and didn't listen to Maximus. Instead of joining forces, they stayed apart. Maximus' camp was a mess, and looked more like a market than a military base. Even so, the Romans were strong. Boiarix asked for land, but the Romans laughed. Caepio, wanting to look good, attacked on October 6th. But the tribes were ready. A fierce group called the Ambrones led the fight and crushed Caepio's army. The survivors ran to Maximus' camp, but it was too late. With the river behind them, many Romans were killed. About 80,000 soldiers died, not counting helpers and camp followers. The tribes celebrated. Their priestesses made sacrifices and even drowned Roman horses in the river as part of their traditions. They didn't go into Italy yet. The Teutones and Ambrones kept raiding Gaul, and the Cimbri went to Spain. When they crossed the Pyrenees Mountains, they met the strong Celtiberians, who pushed them back. Later, the Cimbri met up with the others in Belgic Gaul. Some stayed, but most still wanted to reach Italy. They split up. Boiarix led the Cimbri through the Brenner Pass. King Teutobad took the Teutones and Ambrones down the Rhone Valley. The Tigurini went back to the Norican Alps. In spring, 102 BCE, the Cimbri crossed into northern Italy, with their families and animals. They walked through snow and cold wind until they reached the river Adige. A Roman army led by Quintus Lutatius Catulus waited there. The Romans built a strong bridge to block them. The Cimbri tried to destroy the bridge by damming the river and throwing debris into it. They used parts of mountains, trees, and soil. The Romans were shocked by their strength. Many Roman soldiers ran, but some stayed and fought bravely. The Cimbri admired them and let them live. The Cimbri moved through northern Italy, attacking towns and farms. Catulus made a new camp on the south side of the river Po, while the Cimbri stayed in the north for the winter. The final battle came in summer 101 BCE, near Vercellae. This time, the Romans were ready. Gaius Marius, a smart general, had changed the army. Now soldiers were full-time fighters, trained and organized in strong 600-man groups. Catulus' men were still more like farmers who fought. Boiarix was waiting for help from his allies. But he didn't know the Teutones and Ambrones had already been beaten by Marius the year before at Aquae Sextiae. When Boiarix sent messengers asking for land, Marius showed them the captured leaders of those tribes in chains. Boiarix got angry and challenged Marius to fight. Marius agreed. The battle would happen in 3 days. On the Rhodian plain, the Romans got into position. Marius led the sides of the army with 32,000 men. Catulus had 20,000 in the center. The sun was behind the Romans, shining into the Cimbri's eyes. The Cimbri soldiers marched in a tight square, and their horse riders tried to attack the sides. Javelins flew and the horsemen pulled back. This was a trick. Thinking they were winning, Catulus and men chased them and got out of position. The Cimbri saw the chance and attacked. Marius noticed and pushed his men forward. The dry ground filled with dust and light, blinding the Cimbri. Tired from the heat and dust, they couldn't match the Roman formations. Marius's men attacked the Cimbri horse riders from the side, pushing them into their own people. The Cimbri were soon surrounded. Roman shields closed in from all sides. Boiarix died fighting with his men, who kept battling even with no hope. At the camp, the women made a last stand behind wagons. They used weapons, tools, and even their bare hands. But when the Romans broke through, many women chose death over being captured. Some even ended their own lives or those of their children. The Cimbri army was gone. But the Cimbri people lived on. Some became slaves in Rome. Years later, their children joined Spartacus in his famous revolt. Others stayed in Gaul, joining tribes like the Suebi under Ariovistus. When Julius Caesar defeated Ariovistus in 58 BCE, some Cimbri moved to eastern Gaul, while others crossed the Rhine. Another group mixed with the Teutones, became the Aduatuci, and settled in Belgic lands. In 57 BCE, Caesar surrounded their hill fort. They acted like they were giving up, and handed over weapons but tried a surprise attack. It didn't work, and Caesar took the town. The rest were sold as slaves. Meanwhile, in Denmark, the Cimbri's old homeland still remembered them. In 5 CE, they gave a special cauldron to the Roman Emperor Tiberius as a peace gift. In southern Germany, near Heidelberg, they kept worshipping their gods. Roman writings from the 2nd and 3rd centuries mention Mercury of the Cimbri, that shows their culture survived long after their army was gone.